Most people think of the toilet as just another fixture in the house, a hygienic tool, a convenience. But in classical Feng Shui, the toilet is something far more subtle and far more powerful. It is an energetic gateway, one of the most misunderstood and mishandled zones in any home. And if you're not mindful of what it's doing energetically, it might be quietly draining not just your water, but your fortune, your clarity, your sense of ease. Think about it for a moment. The toilet is where everything exits. Waste, excess, toxins. It's designed for elimination. But here's the thing, in energy work, elimination and release are not neutral. They are directional. And direction in Feng Shui is everything. When you flush, you are signaling the space. You are commanding a downward movement of qi. And if the surrounding environment is not aligned correctly, if the space around the toilet is cluttered, dim, ignored, or energetically unsealed, then that downward flow doesn't stay isolated to just the toilet. It begins to pull energy from the room, from your kitchen, from your wallet, from your peace of mind, slowly, silently, without you even realizing it. Now I know this may sound symbolic. That's because it is. But symbolism is not superstition. It is structure. It's the hidden code your space responds to, whether you believe it or not. The same way your body responds to temperature, even if you're not thinking about the thermostat. The toilet, energetically, is your home's silent exhale. And when it exhales without containment or balance, your personal energy can begin to feel depleted. You may feel like your finances never stabilize, like you're always chasing, always doing, but the results never stick. That's not bad luck. That's environmental design working against your field. And here's something most people never realize. Bathrooms are intimately linked to the water element, which governs emotion, intuition, and financial flow. Water can nourish, but it can also erode. When it's managed well, when the environment around the toilet is respectful, clean, balanced, it acts as a beautiful release point. It says to the universe, I know how to let go. But when that same space is neglected, it sends a very different message. I am losing without awareness, and that message becomes your pattern. This is why you might see a beautifully decorated home that still feels off energetically, or a hardworking person who never quite breaks through financially. Often the cause isn't their mindset, it's their floor plan, and the bathroom is usually the first place to look. If you've been feeling stuck lately, unmotivated, or overwhelmed for reasons you can't quite explain, your toilet may be playing a quiet role in that tension. But the good news is this. You don't need to tear down walls or renovate. You need to redirect. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how, using a simple, ancient, and deeply symbolic Feng Shui ritual that's been used to shift qi for centuries. It's grounded in energetic principles, supported by nature's elements, and used by everyone from Eastern monks to modern entrepreneurs looking for clarity and direction. One CEO I once advised shifted the energy of her space by correcting the placement of just 3 items around her bathroom. And within weeks, she said, it's like the flow returned, not just in my house, but in my thinking. That's how fast qi can respond when it's finally given a clear path. So if this already opens your eyes to a new way of seeing your home, not as static decor, but as living energy, I invite you to go deeper with me today. Because by the end of this video, you'll not only understand how your toilet influences your chai, you'll know how to anchor it, protect it, and transform it into a vessel of clarity and calm, not loss and fatigue. And before we dive in, I want to ask you for one quick gesture. If this message resonates with you so far, if you've ever felt the truth of what I'm saying without knowing how to put it into words, support this work. Give this video a like, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel. We're on a journey to reach 2,000 subscribers here at New Today Mindfulness. And with your support, I'll be able to release even more in-depth rituals, space-clearing schedules, and energetic blueprints that can help you transform not just your house, but your life. Every gesture of support helps us bring this ancient wisdom into the modern world in ways that are practical, grounded, and beautifully effective. Because your home isn't just where you live, it's how you live. And when your environment is clear, your future becomes clearer too. Why bathrooms represent wealth drain in Feng Shui? In classical Feng Shui, the bathroom is often seen as a necessary but energetically problematic area of the home. While modern architecture views it through the lens of plumbing, sanitation, and convenience, energy science sees it as a high-risk zone for wealth loss, mental fatigue, and emotional instability. The reason lies in what the bathroom symbolizes energetically: downward movement. Every fixture in the space, whether it's the toilet, the sink, or the shower, is designed to flush, drain, or rinse things away. That purpose is vital from a hygiene perspective. But from an energetic perspective, it means the bathroom is the only place in your home where multiple chi pathways intentionally exit the space. And in Feng Shui, where Qi moves, attention and opportunity follow. The bathroom is governed by the water element, which is not just linked to physical water, but to the symbolic properties of wealth, adaptability, intuition, and emotional flow. Water is flexible, capable of nourishing everything it touches, but it is also prone to erosion when uncontained. If water is allowed to drain unchecked or stagnate in corners, it doesn't just affect the pipes, it affects the vibrational state of the room. And when that vibration stays unaddressed over time, it begins to communicate subtle patterns into the rest of the house. You may find yourself thinking clearly in one part of your home and completely scattered when you enter or exit the bathroom. Or you may notice that money enters your life regularly, but slips away just as easily without leaving a trace. These patterns are not always tied to mindset or circumstance. Often they originate from physical spaces that hold, or in this case, leak, those energies on your behalf. What makes bathrooms especially difficult is that most people ignore them energetically. We clean the floors, replace the toilet paper, and maybe light a candle, but we rarely ask what the space is signaling. Is it balanced? Is it supportive? Does it hold qi or push it out without containment? This is the crucial question. In Feng Shui, it is not the presence of the bathroom that causes a problem. It is the management of its flow. When water flows with intention, it becomes nourishing. When it flows unconsciously, it becomes a leak, sometimes financial, sometimes emotional, and sometimes relational. This is particularly true for bathrooms located in wealth-governing sectors of the home, such as the southeast corner. The southeast is the wood sector in the five-element system, and wood relies on water to grow. But if that water comes in the form of energetic drainage, unsealed toilets, moisture buildup, or a chaotic layout, it doesn't nourish, it oversaturates. And instead of supporting the qi of growth, it begins to flood the space with energetic confusion. You might find yourself launching new ideas that never gain traction, or experiencing a pattern of starting projects that never fully land. That's not always a personal issue. It can be a spatial one. You're trying to build in a space that keeps pulling energy downward. One of the first indicators that a bathroom's energy is misaligned is how people behave after they use it. If you find yourself feeling slightly more fatigued, disoriented, or unmotivated immediately after spending time in your bathroom, even if it's clean and beautifully designed, it may not be your imagination. Your nervous system is sensitive to qi loss, even when your conscious mind isn't aware of it. That's why some people instinctively close the door every time they leave a bathroom, even if they don't know why. It's an energetic defense mechanism. They are trying unconsciously to seal the leak. The solution is not to fear the bathroom or to see it as inherently negative. In truth, it can become one of the most healing spaces in your home, but only if you treat it as an energy conduit, not a waste zone. Begin by redefining the space. Instead of asking, "Is this clean?" ask, "Was this contained?" Are the drains covered when not in use? Is the mirror positioned with intention, reflecting beauty and clarity rather than clutter and doors? Are the colors chosen to harmonize the water element rather than intensify it? Earth tones, soft whites, and light woods support water by grounding its flow. On the other hand, dark grays or heavy metallic accents can make the space feel cold, industrial, and overly yin, meaning too much inward, downward motion. Also consider the scents and sounds of the space. Bathrooms that echo too much or have cold lighting often carry a feeling of isolation or urgency, which disrupts the chi of calm release. Try adding natural scent diffusers with lemongrass, eucalyptus, or sweet orange. Scents that uplift water and cleanse emotional residue. Gentle music or wind chimes outside the bathroom door can soften the vibrational boundary between this space and the rest of your home. These aren't decorations. They are frequency tools. They tell chi how to behave when it enters the room. The final key is timing. Flush mindfully. In Feng Shui, every water release should be followed by some energetic restoration. That doesn't mean overthinking every trip to the restroom. It means bringing a quiet awareness to the space, acknowledging it, caring for it, sealing it. The toilet lid should always be closed after use, not just for hygiene, but as a symbolic gesture that says, "This energy is complete. This moment is now sealed." Keep a plant or stone nearby to absorb excess chi. A small bamboo, a piece of black tourmaline, or even a decorative bowl of sea salt can do wonders over time. When these principles are applied, the bathroom shifts from a chi sinkhole to a sacred channel. It becomes a space that no longer drains without an end, but releases with clarity and invites chi to return in refreshed form. And that return shows up everywhere, in how easily you wake in the morning, in how decisions begin to flow with less resistance, in how money stays with you longer, not just touches you briefly and vanishes. That's not theory, that's design. Common mistakes most people overlook. When we speak about wealth leaks in Feng Shui, most people imagine major architectural flaws or deeply spiritual misalignments. But in truth, the most powerful disruptions to your fortune rarely come from grand mistakes. They come from small, overlooked habits, quiet fractures in your daily environment that begin to echo through your energy field, not as noise, but as patterns. In bathrooms, the accumulation of these micro signals forms a kind of energetic imbalance. And while each one may seem inconsequential, together they create a consistent downward pull on your wealth chi, your emotional coherence, and your capacity to receive. One of the most underestimated culprits is the toilet lid being left open. While this may seem like a purely aesthetic or hygienic issue, in Feng Shui, the toilet represents one of the strongest suction points for qi in the entire house. When the lid is left open, it acts like an exposed drain on your home's energetic grid. Imagine walking into your space and finding a window permanently ajar during winter. Heat would escape, discomfort would settle in, and no amount of additional warmth would seem to hold. The same principle applies here. An open toilet subtly siphons off stabilized energy, particularly in rooms adjacent to the bathroom like the kitchen, entrance hall, or master bedroom. This is not just theory, it has a cumulative effect on mood, motivation, and money. The solution is deceptively simple. Keep the lid closed. But don't just do it mechanically. Think of it as a sealing gesture, a daily ritual of energetic completion. Next, take a closer look at the condition of the surfaces in your bathroom. Cracked tiles, broken fixtures, leaky faucets, or visible mold don't just affect physical hygiene, they reflect structural instability to the qi that enters the space. In Feng Shui, What is broken in the environment becomes a mirror to what feels fragmented in the self. If your faucet drips constantly, you may find yourself unable to hold focus or money. If the tile under your feet is chipped or uneven, you may feel that your life is built on something uncertain. And if mold silently grows behind the sink, then even your best intentions might start to feel stifled or spoiled over time. The remedy here is not about renovation, it's about symbolism. Repair what you can. Replace what is beyond function. Each act of restoration sends a quiet message to the chai field that says, this household values stability, and she always favors places that demonstrate care. Mirrors, often seen as decorative assets, can also become unintentional sources of loss, particularly when they directly reflect the toilet. In energy terms, mirrors magnify and double whatever they capture. If a mirror reflects beauty, it reinforces beauty. If it reflects an open drain, it echoes that loss back into the room with doubled force. This creates what practitioners call amplified leak patterns. Over time, it may manifest as financial slippage, heightened emotional sensitivity, or an inability to focus during the day. In some cases, you might even find tension increasing in household relationships as the space subtly mirrors back stress points rather than soothing them. The correction is straightforward. Reposition the mirror so it captures light, calm decor, or open space, not the toilet. If structural limits prevent you from moving it, consider placing a lightweight curtain, a panel, or even a living plant to block the direct line of sight. It's not about hiding the toilet, it's about protecting the energy field from unnecessary duplication of its function. Finally, let's talk about lighting. The kind of illumination you choose in a bathroom doesn't just affect mood, it determines the energetic gravity of the space. Strong downward lighting placed directly above the toilet doesn't just cast shadows. It intensifies the gravitational message that everything here is designed to descend, disappear, or dissolve. From a Feng Shui perspective, this creates an energy field where optimism dims, motivation recedes, and clarity becomes inconsistent. You may feel great elsewhere in your home, but find yourself unusually tired or emotionally flat after spending even a few minutes in this space. The adjustment doesn't require major electrical work. Start by adding soft side lighting through a small lamp, an LED backlight, or even a battery-powered candle. Let the glow rise rather than fall. This activates a subtle upward movement of qi, signaling to your energetic system that this space is not just for release, but also for reset. Every one of these corrections, the closed lid, the mended tile, the redirected mirror, the softened light, is not about superstition. It is about coherence. You are aligning your environment to reflect the same message across all its layers, that your space is stable, contained, and consciously curated. And when your space says that clearly, your life begins to echo it in ways both subtle and profound. Energetic replacement, the garlic and salt ritual. In the framework of classical Feng Shui, energy never simply disappears, it transforms. And when you recognize that the bathroom, particularly the toilet area, serves as both an exit point for physical matter and a symbolic vessel for energetic surrender, the question becomes, how do we ensure that what leaves does not take more than it should? How do we ensure that elimination is a process of refinement, not loss? This is where elemental replacement becomes essential. You cannot remove energy without inviting in its higher frequency equivalent. You cannot release downward qi without grounding it in a way that allows new flow to enter. That's not mysticism, it's energetic architecture. The garlic and salt ritual, when stripped of its mystical narrative and recentered through the lens of symbolic alignment and qi containment, becomes a remarkably elegant practice. In this version, it is not about emotional burden or confession. It is about extraction and rebalance. It is about absorbing what lingers and replacing it with clarity and directive flow. The bathroom doesn't just need to be emptied, it needs to be sealed, soothed, and supported. Start with cleanliness, but not from a purely visual perspective. Think energetically. Stagnant qi accumulates in corners, especially near drains and beneath heavy objects. These are the gravity zones of a room. When you clean, pay close attention to the areas where water pools, where mold tends to collect, or where dust stubbornly returns. These are not random inconveniences, they are symptoms of qi congestion. As you scrub and rinse, imagine that you are not simply removing grime. You are preparing a canvas. You are clearing an energetic basin so that what you place next can do its work fully without interference. Now take 1 to 2 fresh cloves of garlic, not pre-cut, not refrigerated, but whole, pungent, and alive. Garlic, in energy work, is a fire-metal hybrid. Its natural oils, especially allicin, cut through decay and stagnation with remarkable precision. But more importantly, its traditional role across cultures has always been protection. It wards off what does not belong. It creates a vibrational boundary. When crushed, that effect is amplified. Add to it a generous handful of coarse sea salt. Salt is earth in its most absorptive form. It does not mask energy, it neutralizes it. It pulls toxins not just from the physical space, but from the frequency of the room itself. And when combined with garlic, the two form a compound that symbolically seals what is being released, preventing energetic backflow. Next, add a few drops of citrus essential oil. Lemon or orange are best. Citrus does not simply refresh, it clarifies. It moves qi upward, like the way zest lifts a heavy dish. In this ritual, it becomes the carrier of positive flow. Lemon, in particular, cuts through emotional residue, while orange introduces the frequency of joy and abundance. In the 5-element system, citrus belongs to the metal-wood cycle, metal for sharpness and elimination, wood for upward growth. Together, these 3 ingredients, garlic, salt, and citrus, form a cleansing triad that holds all 5 elements in supportive relationship. Fire from garlic, earth from salt, metal from the mineral structure, water from the oil, and wood from the citrus peel. This is not accidental. It is symphonic. It is whole. Place the mixture into a small ceramic or earthenware bowl. Never use plastic or aluminum, as these interfere with elemental integrity. Ceramics, being kiln-fired earth, hold grounding resonance. They stabilize. Once mixed, take this bowl and position it behind the toilet base, where qi tends to recirculate spiral form before release. Do not leave it in plain sight. This is not a centerpiece. It is an absorber. It works quietly. Let it sit undisturbed for 3 days. Not 1, not 7, 3. Because in both Feng Shui and universal design, 3 is the number of anchoring. 3 legs on a stool, 3 points in a triangle, 3 days for qi to settle, extract, and shift. On the 3rd bio, return to the space with full attention. This is not about superstition, it's about energetic closure. Pick up the bowl and flush the contents, not to dispose, but to return them to the earth element, their natural place of transformation. As you flush, speak the following aloud, not as a chant, but as a declaration. What no longer serves may return to the earth. May this space now welcome strength, flow, and fortune. This sentence is not just poetic, it is directional. It closes a circuit. It tells the room that the clearing is done and that the field is ready to hold again. Afterward, introduce a stabilizing anchor. Incense is optional but encouraged, especially varieties that support earth and metal elements, like sandalwood or frankincense. Light it near the toilet and allow the smoke to rise, carrying new qi upward. This gesture reverses the dominant downward pull of the room, encouraging a brief moment of energetic elevation. Finally, place a small bowl of fresh oranges or mandarins on the bathroom counter or near the entrance. These fruits are symbols of wealth, harmony, and continuous flow in many East Asian traditions. They do not represent a wish. They represent a state. Their shape echoes wholeness. Their color radiates prosperity. Their scent invites the energy to stay. Replace them weekly, not just for freshness, but as a recurring ritual of offering. Your silent signal that the space is tended, active, and energetically aware. When performed with clarity and intention, this garlic and salt ritual shifts the entire vibrational map of the bathroom. It rewrites its role not as a place where things end, but as a place where clarity begins. And you'll notice the shift not just in the room's air, but in your own behavior. You may feel more decisive, more emotionally steady, less encumbered by vague mental fog, more willing to take action on things that had previously lingered. This is not coincidental. It is what happens when space stops leaking and begins to hold again. In Feng Shui, energy is not neutral. It listens, it repeats, it becomes. And when your most overlooked room is finally treated with the same care you give your sacred altar or your wealth corner, it begins to serve you, not quietly undermine you. That is the power of symbolic recalibration. How Jeff Bezos uses bathroom design to preserve focus and fortune. Among the world's wealthiest and most energetically aware individuals, few understand the interplay between environment and personal rhythm, quite like Jeff Bezos. While his rise is often attributed to strategic intelligence and calculated risk, what's less often discussed is how obsessively intentional he's about managing the spaces around him. Not just his boardrooms or launch facilities, but his private living environments, including his bathrooms. According to staff interviews and biographers close to the Amazon founder, Bezos doesn't treat his bathrooms as purely utilitarian zones. He treats them as tuning chambers, spaces for recalibration and sensory reset. In one particularly telling anecdote from his Beverly Hills residence, designers noted that Bezos insisted on a very specific warm-tone lighting scheme and polished stone finishes that reflected golden hues throughout the master bath. He requested lighting that mimicked sunrise rather than overhead glare. This wasn't about luxury, it was about command over his internal pace. What's fascinating is not that he had the budget to make these choices, it's that he used that budget to reinforce a particular kind of energy, quiet power, a place where decisions could rest for execution. And this philosophy extended beyond light and color. Sources noted that Bezos insisted on uninterrupted quiet in his private bathroom wing, and that candles were present, not for aesthetic, but for intention. One assistant described how, after particularly high-stakes meetings, Bezos would return to this space, close the door, light a sandalwood candle, and remain there alone until he felt that his inner field had returned to coherence. It wasn't a ritual of escape, it was an anchor point, a return to center before the next wave of forward motion. This approach mirrors exactly what Feng Shui teaches, albeit through a different vocabulary. The bathroom is not where things end, it is where they transform. And unless you give that transformation a container, through design, through symbolism, through sensory alignment, it begins to unravel your field from the edges inward. Bezos didn't speak of chi or elemental flow, but his decisions reflected those principles perfectly. Warm earth tones to balance the water element, curated silence to stabilize the mind, soft upward lighting to reverse the natural downward pull of the room. Even the act of candle lighting carries with it the fire element, which in five-element theory gives drive and intention to otherwise passive space. The takeaway is not that one needs wealth to implement these insights. It's that awareness always precedes abundance. And in Bezos's case, The way he managed the most disposable room in his home reflected the same level of precision he applied to global logistics. That's no coincidence. That's alignment. By bringing this same awareness into your own space, regardless of scale or budget, you shift the field from unconscious expulsion to conscious renewal. You're not just flushing, you're resetting. And as this story shows, even at the highest levels of financial achievement, the real power begins with how you hold space, not just how you fill it. Aligning the toilet with energy flow, not against it. There's a crucial distinction in Feng Shui that's often misunderstood. Cleaning does not mean control, and design is not domination. The purpose of correcting bathroom energy is not to fear what might go wrong, but to refine what is already moving. The toilet, as an object, is neutral. What makes it powerful or disruptive is how it is positioned, perceived, and treated in the larger context of your home's energy system. Aligning that flow, rather than resisting or ignoring it, is the key to preserving your vitality, your clarity, and yes, your wealth. Consider the metaphor of rice in a well-aligned kitchen. In Feng Shui, rice is not just food, it is stored wealth. It must be elevated, protected, and never left near heat or moisture. The same symbolic rules apply to the toilet. It is not simply a waste device. It is a moving point of qi, one that must be anchored with intention and balanced with its surrounding elements to prevent it from becoming a leak point in your energetic economy. Just as no one would place their rice container on the floor next to the trash bin and expect fortune to flow, no one should allow their bathroom to sit energetically unguarded at the heart of their living space. One of the first principles in aligning toilet energy is containment. If the bathroom is near your entrance or kitchen, two zones critical to your home's intake and nourishment, then its influence must be carefully moderated. The bathroom door should remain closed, not just for privacy, but as a symbolic seal. The door is the skin of that room. When it remains open, the downward pull of water energy reaches out, seeping into adjacent rooms, subtly lowering the vitality of spaces where you should be cooking, planning, or receiving. Closing the door is not superstition. It is energetic hygiene. Second, invite the presence of the wood element to moderate the excess water. In the 5-element cycle, wood draws strength from water. It metabolizes what is otherwise overwhelming. A small bamboo stalk in a neutral ceramic vase or a snake plant on a wooden tray can act as a buffer, an anchor for qi that might otherwise swirl downward unchecked. This is not about decoration. It is about redirecting movement. Wood, when placed properly, lifts the energy upward, reintroducing a vertical axis in a space that otherwise spirals down. This shift is almost imperceptible at first, but with time, the entire field of the bathroom begins to change. You'll notice fewer emotional swings, less mental clutter, even a reduction in household disagreements, especially when the bathroom is located near communal spaces. Color choice also matters. Where water dominates, earth must respond. Think of this not as aesthetic, but as elemental compensation. Water is cool, dark, and dissolving. Earth is warm, solid, and stabilizing. When you paint or accessorize your bathroom with earth tone shades, beige, ochre, warm taupe, light mustard, you introduce a grounding force into the visual field. These colors don't just soothe the eyes, they soothe the space. They send a message that says, there is structure here, there is support. And support is what keeps fortune anchored when the rest of life feels like it's in flux. Scent is another invisible but potent element in space alignment. It travels faster than light and bypasses cognition to speak directly to mood, emotion, and energetic receptivity. A bathroom that smells overly sterile, stale, or too heavy with artificial air fresheners tends to vibrate in the lower frequency range of decay. This doesn't mean it's dirty, it just means it hasn't been attuned. Instead, Aim to refresh the qi weekly with nature-derived essential oils. Citrus, especially orange or grapefruit, activates flow. Lemongrass clears stagnant thought. Eucalyptus creates openness in both breath and field. You don't need a diffuser. A simple bowl of rock salt with a few drops of oil placed discreetly near the toilet or sink is enough. As the salt absorbs moisture and negative ions, the scent gently spreads a new intention throughout the room. It's not overpowering, it's persuasive. These changes may seem subtle: a closed door, a green plant, a new towel in a warmer hue, a bowl of orange peels refreshed every Sunday. But Feng Shui does not reward effort. It rewards alignment. You don't need to renovate. You need to understand what the space is asking for and what your habits are currently signaling. A bathroom aligned with its role, release, reset, rebalance, becomes a space of quiet dignity. A place where you don't just let go of waste, but also of stress, confusion, and friction. It becomes, in essence, a sanctuary, not despite its function, but because of how well its function is honored. And over time, these small shifts ripple outward. You might find that decisions become easier to make, that finances feel less erratic, that tension in relationships softens without needing long conversations. The toilet is not where luck disappears, it's where energy recalibrates, but only if it is allowed to do so with containment, uplift, and care. Finally, you're not just flushing water, you're resetting energy. Every release in the home, every rinse, every drain, every flush is a choice to surrender something. And in Feng Shui, that choice is never neutral. The toilet may be where the body lets go, but it's also where the home can quietly lose its grip on prosperity, clarity, and momentum. Not because of superstition, not because of magic, but because unattended flow always becomes erosion. Energy must be guided, it must be sealed, it must be respected for what it gives and for what it takes. Think of it this way: no farmer would water a field without knowing where the water flows. No builder would open a channel without placing a gate. So why should the most fluid, most active energy zone in your home, the bathroom, be left to chance? This isn't about fear, it's about stewardship. It's about shifting from unconscious routines to intentional redirection. Whether it's closing the lid with quiet attention, lighting incense not for beauty but for balance, or placing a bowl of salt and citrus as a symbol of clarity. These are not performances. They are permissions. They give your space and your spirit the message that flow still belongs to you, that what leaves will return in a better form, that what drains today doesn't have to take tomorrow with it. So I invite you now not to believe but to observe. Try just one thing: set a bowl behind your toilet with garlic and sea salt, close the lid with presence, light a stick of sandalwood, and walk away without a word. Then watch, not the incense, not the air, but the pattern of your own life, the way your emotions shift, the way your finances settle, the way you wake up one morning and feel quietly like something in your life just clicked back into place. Because that's what alignment feels like. It's not loud. It doesn't need to prove itself. It just works, softly, steadily, and faithfully. If this message helped you see your home differently, if it whispered something familiar you hadn't quite heard before, let me know in the comments what you'll try first. Share this with someone whose space could use a reset, and subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. When we reach 2,000 subscribers, I'll unveil the full energetic map of the home, room by room, so you can continue to turn your house into a place that doesn't just shelter you, but strengthens you. And remember, the flush is not the end. It's a beginning. Every time you close that lid with care, you're telling the universe, I'm ready to release what's done and I'm ready to receive what's next.